This is an absolute honour to be speaking about such an important topic for Toowoomba's 5th Creative Mornings. Although I get the opportunity to travel the world and speak about business as my living, something like this is so foreign to me. I'm excited, nervous, and ultimately grateful for the opportunity to share with you all this morning and perhaps reveal a different side that doesn't often see the light of day. So a heartfelt thank you to you, the creative community, and Phoebe, and the entire Creative Mornings team. Can we give them a massive, massive round of applause? It's such a special thing that we've got here, and it's just an honour. Justice. What a topic to explore. A meaty, metaphoric, poetic, sometimes confusing, built from the ancients, yet a timeless topic. I think it would be safe to say that on face value, many would associate justice with barristers in curly wigs, the hammer of the judge, law, perhaps the TV series Suits, or for me personally, the dun-dun after the deep, smooth voice of the Law and Order intro. In the criminal justice system, the people are represented by two separate yet equally important groups. The police who investigate the crime, and the district attorneys who prosecute the offenders. These are their stories. Dum dum! By the way, it's like the best piece of music for a TV series. I was preparing for the day, and all I'm thinking is the music, and it's still in my head now. Anywho, but to me, the final part is what I find interesting, and that is the stories of justice and injustice. This has been with us since the dawn of time, and therefore I find justice weaving through the very fabric of society, communities, and humanity as a whole. It's a shared experience for all, spilling out from deep within. And for this reason, I think we are deeply curious of what justice all means. So what I've titled today is Justice, the Gateway to Meaning, among many other beautiful things. It's what I'm endeavouring to explore with you today. And my hope is that by exploring it together, we will leave with all of those other beautiful things too. Strangely enough, when exploring my thoughts, the world around me, ancient texts, Greek mythology, Plato's Republic, and everything else I could sink my teeth into, I quickly discovered that justice goes well beyond curly wigs, law and justice systems, so to speak, to something vastly more meaningful and rich. And like any other gateway, the purpose is simply to take you from one place to another. It's a path to be walked, a road to be travelled, sometimes taking lifetimes, other times a moment. The second mystery I discovered was the ultimate purpose of justice, and that is to take us from one or out of heartache, prejudice, suffering, sorrow, angst, trouble, injustice, pain, and grief, towards peace, freedom, joy, love, truth, acceptance, healing, permanence, and meaning. And I'd love to focus on 3 today, which is grief, meaning, and permanence. You see, justice exists because suffering, grief, injustice, and pain exists. That which we all know as the great equalizer, that which we as creatives often use as a source of inspiration, a fuel for creative endeavours. Our creative ventures often tackle the toughest of things, often as a gateway for healing, not only for ourselves, but ultimately for others too. And despite this being a heavy topic, one that we, I believe, often endeavour to shy away from, I do believe it to be a beautiful one. And I'd love to tell you a story of how justice has taught me a remarkable lesson that I'm forever grateful for, if you're up for it. Yeah. Okay, cool. This is the wisest man I know. He's affectionately known as Pa by all who knew him. You see, I've always had a special connection with Pa. He's my wife's grandma. Where's my wife, by the way? Good. This is good. And my beautiful children. He's my wife's grandfather, and I had the privilege of knowing him during my teenage years. Even before I met Anna, Ma and Pa are great friends of my parents, and after married life, I could call him Pa for real. My dad lost his father when he was only 3. My mother lost her father when she was only 18. I can vividly remember as a child wishing that I had grandfathers in my life, something I never had the privilege of. In July last year, as you can see in this photo, I had the honour of spending time with him on a cool winter's day as I curiously asked, what was the greatest lesson in his life? He stared back at me. Silence followed for some time. Pay attention to the nudges, Steve. I was quick to realise that wisdom has a way of boiling books into chapters, chapters into paragraphs, and paragraphs into just a few words. I spent the next 30 minutes firing 30,000 words back towards Pa of what I thought it meant. He was kind and smiled and agreed with most of what I had to say, occasionally saying a few more words that had infinitely more meaning than the books I was spitting back. I didn't know what he actually meant until much later. Then there was cancer. I want to take a moment to explore my own curiosity, if you will. I'd love for you to stand if you personally have had an experience with cancer, or you personally know someone who has had an experience with cancer. Wow. Know that as we stand together in solidarity, and also know that we support one another, and as these troubling times come through our lives, also please know that you are not alone in this, something that often seems to close in on us. I want you to take a moment to look around the room and feel the comfort of knowing that the overwhelming majority of people know what it's like to hear, Mum has cancer, Dad has cancer, friend has cancer, I've got cancer, or sometimes even worse, I've got some bad news, it's back. Please take a seat, thank you. I'm sure you'll agree. This is when that traditional view of justice gets thrown out the window, as I've never personally seen a case where it's overwhelmingly fair by any stretch. Often it's confusing, it's surprising, it's unpredictable and unfair. It causes one to contemplate life and how short it is. It causes one to explore what's important and that moments with others are gifts, something we often take for granted. Pa had Hodgkin's lymphoma. He battled in and out for 7 or so years. Treatment after treatment, hospital trip after hospital trip, hair on, hair off, hair on, hair off. He fought beautifully. And when hearing the stories of how Pa got to love and serve other people in the cancer wards, he was always quick to say, I wouldn't miss it for the world. During his own treatments and his own coming to terms with death, Pa would often receive a knock on the door from a nurse saying, there's a man down the hall that might need a visit from you, Jeff. He would smile, wander down, and sit with those in particularly troubled times. He would pray for the patients and their families, and sometimes spend time talking about nothing in particular. He was a comforting man to be in the presence of. Then came one Saturday afternoon that I'll never forget. A truly life-changing experience where I finally figured out what Pa was talking about when he said, pay attention to the nudges. With my wife Anna and our 2 girls, we visited Pa. He was pale, frail, yet still unbelievably kind and curious. I'd be lying to say that it wasn't confronting. Seeing someone you dearly love transcending in between this life and the next and back again is an interesting thing to see. We sat beside his bed and had broken conversation. He looked at me and asked with a soft voice, "Where have you been this week, mate?" "Melbourne, Pa." "How was Melbourne, Stevie?" And even in his final hours, he wanted to know about my life. And as we sat there enjoying these moments with an internal conflict of love and pain, my inner voice said nothing but hold his hand. Nudge, nudge, nudge. And without hesitation, I did, knowing that I may never feel his warmth again. And as soon as I did, he slowly turned to me and he said, "Your hand is cold." "Thank you. It's nice." I held his hand and I held back tears. We chatted for as long as we could. And then it came to say goodbye. Tears in my eyes, I looked into his and I said, "I love you, Pa." "Goodbye, my mate." And at that moment, I realized what goodbye truly meant. That night, lying beside Anna, back in our beds, we received the message that Pa was gone. As you can see, grief is still very much pursuing me. I don't think it ever leaves. It just changes, and that's okay. Since that Saturday, my life has not been the same. The personal change and growth that I've experienced has been nothing short of remarkable, and it's all been thanks to Lady Justice and the exploration of all she has to teach. It's been a true gateway experience through justice. You see, most of life and all it has to offer is impermanent by nature. Things and people come and go. It's held in time and space. It has expiry dates. Yet learning from Pa's experience, I discovered something that has reinvigorated the inner child in me and has inspired me to explore the deep creative yearnings that have always been there. I picked up the pencil and I started to draw again, something I haven't done since I was 10. I've been writing like never before, despite spending the last 5 years writing books. And it's all down to the fact that we as a creative community do our very best and meaningful work when we transcend time and space and we create something with permanence. It's why I truly love to write. As the books and words on a page can still ring true and still carry my voice long after I'm gone from this life. Think about it. Music, art, poetry, photography, pottery, plays, scripts, films, you name it. It carries permanence, and because of that alone, it has inherent value and meaning. Way beyond momentary and monetary value of here and now. And even if your creative field doesn't in and of itself hold permanence, cooking or floristry, for example, the experience you give can create a permanent altering of one's life. We've all had that one meal or seen that one bouquet where it was like, wow, I can never go back from that, right? It's kind of disheartening at the same time, right? Like, we set the standard and it's really high, but it's beautiful. And I think that is why we as a creative community are called to exercise our gifts and talents. It's to point people to meaning. I can tell from some of these noddings and ahas, you're in agreement with me. There is a drawing nature to the work we do, and there's something that goes beyond the head towards the heart, and dare I say, the soul. Perhaps that's why Pa pointed to his stomach when he said, pay attention. It comes from within. So the question becomes, what stops us? What stops us from stepping into our full potential and purpose? Some would say fear. Would you agree? I agree too. I think it even goes a little bit further. I think it's because of judgment. And I think it's because of self-judgment. We look to Lady Justice. Lady Justice is the personification of justice, along with all the deep wonders and mysteries that she carries. For the past couple of millennia, she has been depicted with 3 distinctive attributes: her blindfold, her balance scales, and her sword. I think she has some lessons for us to overcome the self-judgment we often feel and experience as a creative. I'm my own worst critic. You may have heard or said this very thing when observing your own work. Yeah, a couple of agreement, right? I don't like it. It's not good enough. It's not ready. I'm not ready. You hear it all the time, right? Within ourselves and people around us. You see, Lady Justice wears her blindfold to show impartiality to those around her, not being persuaded incorrectly by judgment of the eyes. This, I believe, can be our Achilles heel, especially when so many creative ventures carry a visual element to them. This is not to discredit the value of appropriate design and visual appeal for the meaning conveyed, but rather to work like Lady Justice does. She doesn't allow first sights to cast judgment. She rather blinds herself from first sights to work with her other tools of the trade. I think there is a great metaphor in that, not only in our work, but in our relationship with strangers and fellows known alike. Example of this, have you ever met someone on first face value and you're like, I don't think I'll get along with this person. And then you start to chat with them for like 5 minutes, you're like, this person is sick. Who's ever had that sort of experience? That's like blinding yourself to first judgments and stepping in and being like, let's explore this. Let's see what happens next. You know what I mean? I think there's something special about this community that does that, by the way. It's really cool. Thanks for the yes. I'm digging that. Keep it coming, right? Secondly, she carries a balance scale, noticeably carried high, and there's no base to it. This is to allow the scales to fall as they may, weighing accurately the case at hand. For me, this represents those nudges once again. I have an inherent belief that all of us are drawn to certain things. Some of us call that purpose, right? And when trusting one's heart and gut, we realize that we are never 50-50 on something or perfectly on the fence about anything in particular, okay? Like, when we are still with ourselves and stop to deeply listen to our quiet inner voice, we begin to realize that the scales are 51-49 at most, right? But often it's more like 80-20, if we're really honest with ourselves. Sometimes it's even like 99-1, but we hold on to that one little thing that's holding us back, right? It's like, it's got to be perfect. We're like, it's never going to be perfect, dude. 99's pretty good. So, Lady Justice makes decisions based on where the scales fall, even if it's by a fraction. She backs herself. She's decisive and acts without hesitation. She isn't swayed by hearsay or sideline comments from those outside jury duty. You know these types? Oh, have you thought about this, Steve? You have no idea. Right? She accurately measures with well-worn scales, and the verdict's final. If only we trusted our inner scales and acted with the same haste, what marvelous things we could do. I like it. And finally, she carries a sword, sharp and powerful. To me, this represents life's journey of our own abilities and power to bravely cut away and refine those parts of ourselves that aren't inherently good for ourselves and for others. For when we do, we utilize the gateway or the portal. That's the inner nerd of me coming out. The portal of justice that takes us from pain towards healing, sorrow to peace, angst to joy and ultimate contentment. Pa taught me this better than anyone. To be in such pain, yet say he wouldn't miss it for the world. Shows we too have the power to traverse tragedies and be left stronger than ever even when our bodies fail us. So how will you respond to the crossroads? I sat with my pen, contemplating life as a whole. This is what I was drawn towards. Life to me is a series of crossroads, decisions, yeses and nos that equally cancel each other out, dependent on the choice. You can't be simultaneously yes and no at the same time. Life doesn't seem to work that way. And as we navigate life, one simple decision can mean we end up in an entirely different place. There is no going back. A decision left, a decision right, each with its own unique sets of consequences and challenges. Sometimes the path is straight and smooth. Other times a little chaotic and rapid. I've come to realize since PAR that it's not so much about the circumstances you find yourself in, but rather the response to them. Those responses are permanent and add to your journey. I spend minutes, yes, I'm weird, sometimes hours, tracing my finger along these paths on a page, reminding myself that if I choose left here instead of right, this is where I may end up. This has left me with the healthy weight of responsibility to choose wisely, as one micro decision could mean a complete altering of my life and the life of those around me. Strangely, it makes life wildly exciting and terrifying all at once. Perhaps that's exactly how life is best lived. It's also taught me to pursue my true passions and callings for no other reason than I'm moving along this path from the start of my life to the end of my life. Each day that passes means I've journeyed a little further. There is no going back. And from this realization, I have fallen in love all over again with something I believe to be the best use of my life as a whole. That is to write things that carry meaning. Things that can be used for the betterment of future kin I'll never have the privilege of meeting. Oh, how I wish my grandfathers wrote. Perhaps I could hear their voice. Perhaps I could learn more about myself through them. It's that permanence that writing carries that inspires me at ungodly hours. I often can't sleep. I'm sure you know that feeling too. They always seem to come at the most inappropriate times. Have you noticed this? So the question I have for you is a simple one. How can you work through permanence? So after PAR, I've been writing poetry, lots of poetry, and have embarked on a journey of writing letters to my bride. Not the traditional bride you may be thinking of, and no, not love letters to Anna. Grade 11, Steve won her over with cheesy love songs. That's another story altogether, and we are never going there. Oh, wow. I'm a visual person, so you get flashbacks, and that one was not good. This bride that I'm talking about here is the personification of that which you feel drawn towards. I truly believe each and every person has a bride that they feel drawn towards. It could be a business, a creative venture, singing, a trade, jewelry making, sourdough baking, you name it. Strangely enough, I've discovered that my bride is this very book itself. Letters to my bride. So in some strange book inception, I'm writing to the book itself. Weird, I know. So I'm here today to give you permission to be head over heels in love. Pursue this bride for no other reason than you can right now. Woo her, explore with her, share your secrets with her, and enjoy life with her in all its ups and downs. So to conclude, I'd love to read you one of my poems, fittingly entitled Lady Justice. inspired by my beautiful pa. I think it nicely encapsulates all that we've explored together this morning. Dear bride, I find myself contemplating why this world of ours is full of things unjust. Cancerous cells attack kindest souls, cutting lives short, leaving children without parents, parents without children, halved lovers with one side cold in lukewarm beds. Lady Justice, is your blindfold tight? Is your sword blunt? Are your scales imbalanced? Your verdicts are wrong. You're not worthy to judge. But within this great paradox where bad things happen to good people, we are called to jury duty and gifted with a choice to make meaning. In these tragedies, we rewrite the sentence despite life's script having no reruns, retakes, repeats, or encores. Well, not here and now anyway. Moment by moment, our lines are read. Chronologically, they pass forever, stuck in time. So, we find ourselves pulled to side, a constant tension between good, bad, right, wrong, love, despair, benevolence, malevolence, kindness, spite, innocence, and guilt. A celebratory glass of wine shared with friends, or a barrel of poison endeavouring to forget even yesterday. These moments manifest different doors and halls with unique costs and sacrifices. Which way will you choose? To what path surrender? What sentence accept? Tattooed on your forearm for all to see if they cared to notice. And as we navigate life, attempting to make meaning from the injustice that we see and feel and inflict upon ourselves and others, we remain apart, remain with one almighty quest to do our lives justice, broadening potential, fulfilling highest purpose, that is, to play freely as the children do, to squeeze life's juices every second, every day, whilst we're gifted the opportunity to do so. Sometimes sweet, sometimes bitter, other times fair, but frequently scandalous. What will you make it mean? And through it all, we look to Lady Justice, thirsting for her discernment to show impartiality to strangers and fellows known alike, to seek balance using her well-worn scales to measure daily impulses. And we are to be bravely and precisely cut away those parts that aren't inherently good for ourselves and for others. For when we do, we leave behind something remarkable, regardless of circumstance. A life thoroughly lived, a life lovingly remembered. Thank you.